you earn your pay?
How'd you earn your pay?
I will reply with a whole lot of anger.
I will reply with a whole lot of anger.
Earn my pay as an airborne ranger.
Earn my pay as an airborne ranger.
So off that topic, let's move on to using rangefinders and determining windage. So for this demonstration, I'm going to be using the Vector 21B, and there is another rangefinder in ARMA that's called the Yardage 450, where the only difference between the two is that the yardage is not compatible with the dagger system, and the yardage is also a lot lighter, and it does not zoom in as far as the Vector 21 Bravo. So that being said, let's start using this thing. So the first thing I'm going to do is press R to load in my batteries. By the way, the Vector and the Yardage both use the same batteries. You don't need more than one pair of batteries, you just need one. So you see the upper left-hand corner of my screen, it says battery loaded. And then you'll see this number on the lower left-hand corner, 149, and that symbol, which represents degrees, that's superscript 0, this means degrees. So if I press the fire button, it'll fire a laser out and tell me the range to the target in meters. Once again, the ARMA uses the metric system. 825 meters. As you'll recall, that's exactly the distance I set it at using the computer. Now, pressing left Alt and the R key. So that is left Alt Romeo. You will see that number in the left-hand corner changed quickly to 6,400 and then show me a different number. What that did was tell me, it is now going to tell me my bearing, the target's bearing from my location in a in units of a circle that's divided by 6,400. And if I recall properly, the compass in ARMA utilizes that bearing system as well, and I will show you right here. As you can see, 0 at the very bottom, that is degrees, and at the top number, that is the 6,400. And then 2 stands for 2,000, 4, 4,000, 6, 6,000. So if that's what you were wondering, that is the alternate bearing system that the compass has. It's more precise, much more precise. Now that 6,400 comes from actually a derivative of the milliradians, in that 6,283 milliradians per circle is kind of an odd number. It's a little funky to work with. So what they did was rounded it off to 6,400. And depending on what compass you use in real life, you'll actually see this rounded off to either 6,400 or 6,300. In ARMA, the compass is rounded off to 6,400. Not mil-dot, sorry, milliradian bearing system. Pressing Alt-R one more time. 6,283, that number should look familiar. That's exactly 6,283 milliradian. So now it's giving me bearing in a true milliradian circle. Pressing Alt-R one more time, I believe will bring me back to degree. And there it is, 360 degrees. And out of a 360-piece circle, this target is 150. So that's about it for using rangefinders. Now let's move on to measuring windage, and to do that, I am going to be using the Kestrel 4500. And to access that, I use my self-interact. Click on the Kestrel, and here it pops up. So now it already tells me my heading in degrees. You'll see I'm heading south by southeast, or south by southeast, bearing 150. And the first thing we're going to want to do is calibrate this by hitting the center button right here for that degree. And now it is calibrated. Now we're going to press the left arrow once. And it's telling me my crosswind. And calibrating it allows the Kestrel to calculate the horizontal component of the crosswind, because that's all we're interested in. It divides the wind up into 2 components, actually. The horizontal component, which is crosswind, and the vertical component, which is headwind. And if we press left one more time, you'll see headwind. I will explain that in a minute. Crosswind is going to be our our largest windage consideration when shooting at long range. So as you can see here, it's 1.8 meters per second, but what this does not tell you is whether or not it's 1.8 meters per second going from left to right, or going from 1.8 meters per second going from right to left. So to determine that, we pressed Shift K. As you can see from this green arrow, it's coming toward us, coming from right to left. So now that we know that, we're going to check our headwind. Headwind is 3.55 meters per second. Now here's the thing. When the ACE development team was developing the system, they didn't correctly implement a headwind system, in that the headwind, even though it's 3.58 or varying, slightly changing very slightly, it doesn't actually affect the bullet flight path that much. Even at extreme ranges, and I'm talking about ranges up to 1,500 meters, it still doesn't affect your shot that much. So I don't know if they forgot to implement that, but that's just the case in Arma 2 ACE. Altitude. This is another consideration, because as you should know, well, as altitude changes, so does air pressure, because the air density is changing. And obviously if there's less air density, the bullet is having to travel through a lighter medium. Means less dense air, so that means with less dense air, it's getting less friction. Therefore, it is not losing velocity as fast, and is going to have a flatter trajectory. But once again, the ACE development team did not implement this system very well, and it doesn't really affect your shot. So you don't really have to think about this, other than the fact, unless you're going to go and do artillery, which is going to play a big part in elevation changes between you and your target position. But that's getting off topic, so let's move back. So I'm going to pull up the range chart again, and here's a quick side note. Your range chart pressing Shift V will not pop up unless you have your M24 out and if it is loaded and ready to fire. Your range chart will not pop up if your gun is unsafe or if it is unloaded or the magazine is spent. So you need to have at least one bullet in your magazine and needs to be ready to fire. So, moving on. Windage. Here on the right side you'll see. The way you calculate your correction factor, or your adjustment for windage, is, this is your correction factor, sorry, I'm misspeaking. The way you find your adjustment is that you take your wind speed, which should be 1.87 meters per second, the crosswind wind speed, divide it by 4, and multiply it by this correction factor here. And that will give you your correction, your necessary scope correction in minutes of angle. Once again, not mils. So, let's start setting up our shot. The target is 825 meters, so it's not at 800, it's not at 900. It's quarter way between the two. So that means to find our correction, we're going to need to find a quarter way between 26 and 32. Now, the difference between these two numbers is 6. So we need to find 1/4 of 6 and add that to 26, and that adds up to be around 27.5. So we can round that to 28. And here the same thing. Add quarter way from 7.9 to 9.5, get about 8.3, I would say. So I'm going to quickly do the math and set up what our windage should be. And that is 1.87 divided by 4, multiplied by 8.3, our windage correction factor, and gives us a 3.88 minute of angle correction. Now, when we make our windage correction, we're going to correct into the wind. I don't know why, but a lot of people, when they're first starting out shooting at long range, they accidentally correct with the wind. You do not shoot with the wind. That's just going to make your shot miss by a hell of a lot. You want the wind to carry your bullet into the target, so you're going to shoot into it. So once again, our wind is going from right to left. So, let's make our windage corrections. As I said, was 3.88. And as you see, the windage makes correction increments in 0.5 minutes of angle. So the closest we can get is about 3.5. Or I should round it up to 4, I should say. And the distance, as we said, was 27.5, which is about, which rounds up to 28 minutes of angle up. So, 28 minutes of angle up, 4 minutes of angle to the right. Our shot is set up. And shift space, I forgot to mention that, deploys your bipod, another essential ACE feature that makes shooting at long range really a lot easier, I should say. Now I'm going to mention something. I'm going to shoot center mass of this target but I'm probably going to miss, and I'm going to explain that in a minute. But for now, let's just take the shot. And I actually hit the target, and we can check the target impact. And the very top right corner. So, I hit the target, but I almost missed the target. And I aimed for the center mass, dead center of the target, right in the gut, where kill shot should be. And I almost missed the target. Now, why is that? I made all the calculations. You might be wondering, like, maybe he calculated slightly off. Maybe he did something different, or he wasn't supposed to, but that's not the case.